Hello everyone, welcome to the 2016 Coke 0400 at Daytona race review, where I recap what went on before the race, during the race, and after the race, looking ahead to the upcoming race. So, overall thoughts on this race. I think the best way for me to describe it is a race that had its ups and downs, and I'll talk more about those ups and downs, or some of the ups and downs later in this recap. As far as the quality of racing goes, it was definitely okay. I think in terms of the quality of the racing overall, if you look at the race from start to finish, it was definitely better than Daytona, which was just kind of like this sort of arrow push parade where no one could touch GGR. It wasn't exactly like that the same. There was definitely a good racing. Drivers could pass, even though passing is still pretty difficult. But we were able to see passing. And there were only I think 2 or 3 times in the entire race where they got single file. But when the field did get single file, it didn't stay like that for maybe more than 4 or 5 laps. So it was overall pretty solid racing. I think 2017 NASCAR can look into the aero package more, maybe making drag more, maybe adding drag, taller spoiler, other things. I just think that side draft and getting a push for promoters, it has just become too reliant, and I think it actually often leads to some of the chaotic crashes we see at these play tracks. But also it's not worth forgetting to mention that Keselowski and his team just simply came to Daytona with the best car, and they were able to execute it into a win, a pretty dominant victory, leading 115 laps. No one else in the race led more than 16. Kyle Busch led, and Kyle Busch was the driver who led 16 laps. First win at Daytona, 5th win at Play Track, and his first win at Play Track was back in 2009. So really, in this short period of time, Keselowski has really evolved into, I would say, the best plate racer right now in NASCAR. He certainly does not have as many plate wins as Jeff Gordon, Dale Sneer, Dale Jr., but I just think right now he's the best plate racer. He's just when he gets the lead, he's just able to keep it very well. And really look at what he was able to do and how he was able to hold off everyone else in the final laps of this race. And to me, it takes a lot of talent and skill, etc., to do what he did. I also just want to say that this race also went by pretty quick, in my opinion. In fact, looking at previous races at Daytona, I think this was the quickest 400 4th of July Daytona race since 2004, I believe. Only 5 cautions. The exact time of the race was 2 hours and 40 minutes. So pretty quick race. It actually went by faster than I thought it would be. It often seems like that when the 4th of July Daytona race rolls around, there's a lot to talk about before the race even begins. And the first note on the list is NBC returns. This is the 2nd year in a row of its current contract that goes all the way until 2024, and there weren't really any noticeable changes. And I'm fine with that, because last year NBC, I think, did a marvelous job of covering NASCAR races most of the time. And so I'm fine without any noticeable changes. I think Rick Allen, Jeff Burns, Steve Hart meshed together very nicely. And I think that there's definitely a lot of stuff that they mentioned that Fox doesn't really mention at all, that I think is nice to hear. And I expect another good year from them this year. And I thought they were good at Daytona, other than the one thing that I'll get to later on. Now, a couple of rule changes were made regarding the charge system. If a non-charge team makes the chase, they'll be locked into every single chase race, so they will not have to worry about missing the field. And so this is really good news for Ryan Blaney and the Wood Brothers, who can definitely run inside top 5, top 10, maybe they'll get a win before the chase even begins. So that's good for them, because beforehand there was a possibility of someone like Ryan Blaney making the Final Four, but then at Homestead, someone fields an extra car, Ryan Blaney crashes in qualifying or is not fast enough, and And there you have, and there you go. One of your Final Four is not even uh, battling for the championship, and so that's good news. DeWalt Tools extends its sponsorship with GGR as a whole, not just Matt Kenseth. About a month ago, Dollar General announced that it was not going to come back to NASCAR, and they sponsor Matt Kenseth and they have been sponsoring Matt Kenseth throughout the majority of this year and the last few years. DeWalt Tools decided to step up, adding a couple races to Matt Kenseth. They're going to be this year, and then becoming, I think, the primary sponsor for next year and likely for the foreseeable future. Also adding sponsorship for Eric Jones and Daniel Suarez in the Xfinity Series. And I gotta say, this year they brought out a good paint scheme for the 4th of July Daytona race. I think that was a DeWalt paint scheme, but I might be wrong. Also, a new tire is being brought to Kentucky for next weekend's race. You may not have heard the story, but the original tire that they were going to bring had blisters after the June test last month, and that's good. We definitely do not want another 2008 Brickyard 400. Also, drivers' council meeting. I think that this was held on Thursday, and there were a couple of topics being discussed. For example, the possibility of maybe making like the race weekend shorter, like a day, more hardworking people to get another day off. Also, the possibility of maybe talking about like weekday races, which I'm personally not a fan of. I just want to get that out there. Also, looking for ways to make the All-Star Race and Sprint Unlimited more prestigious, and hey, I don't have a problem with that. Now as we look into like Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Thursday, NASCAR battled Mother Nature, and out of those and it had 2 scheduled practices for the Sprint Cup Series on Thursday. We only got one of them in, and it only lasted like we didn't even get 2 minutes into that practice session. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. was the fastest. And so because of that, NASCAR scheduled 1 practice on Friday, and it would become like the first and only official practice. Brian Scott was the fastest in the practice session. And then later that Friday, Greg Biffle snatched the pole. This was definitely a big surprise, not only for me, but for a lot of people. He has not scored a pole since the fall Charlotte race in 2012. So almost 4 years. And Biffle has really not shown a lot of speed anywhere over the past few years. And so this really came as a huge shock. But who knows? Maybe this will be the start of him and that 16 team turning the corner around in the right direction. Following Greg Biffle was Carl Edwards, Kyle Busch, Ricky Stenhouse Jr., Brad Keselowski, Austin Dillon, Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, Denny Hamlin, Kurt Busch, Joe Logano, and Ryan Blaney. If you've been a NASCAR fan for many years, you might have heard the phrase "nothing but commercials." This was a big complaint from NASCAR fans towards NBC during its original run from 2001 to 2006. And it's safe to say that after watching this race, nothing has improved. Because this race was just filled with a plethora of commercials. In fact, if you go to Twitter at NickPrice91, he calculated that 46.9% of the 160 laps in this race were not televised, were not shown to us because they were in commercial break. So in other words, we didn't see almost half of the race due to commercials. That is excessive and very unnecessary. And as a viewer, it was just annoying and irritating. In fact, during at some point in the middle of the race, I actually hit rewind to see how many laps of racing we got, and the commercial they only showed like 4 laps, and then it'd be like 3 minutes of commercials, and at Daytona 3 minutes of commercials is like 4 to 5 laps. So yeah, very excessive. In fact, to me, I was sort of waiting for them to say, here we go, 1 lap to go, and commercial break. Here we go to the checkered flag. Keselowski wins the race. I was sort of waiting for something like that because, my goodness, it was just irritating, annoying, and in the list of negative words to say about NBC's excessive commercials, it could go on and on. Hopefully, next week at Kentucky, when it goes to NBCSN, there aren't as many commercials. But I gotta say, if things don't change if this doesn't get addressed and things don't change, then it's going to be a very long second half of the season. The problem with excessive commercials is that it kills the interest of the diehard fan and even the casual fan. And really, I think that the excessive amount of commercials I think kept us from seeing some of the kept us from seeing some of the good action that happened during the race. So for NBC, so this was a pretty rough way for NBC to kick off its 2016 NASCAR season, and that was really a shame because like I said before, I think NBC does a fine job, but this is like the big elephant in the room that needs to be addressed and fixed. NBC decided to air the second half of driver introductions, and Joe Logano by far got the most boos and loudest boos among any other driver after this race. He certainly isn't going to get less boos in the future because he raced like a jackass in my opinion, and he did this in the Xfinity race too. There were a couple times where I was like, "What the hell is Logano doing?" And last night, him and Kurt Busch got together coming out turn number 4 on the final lap of the race. Kurt Busch was battling Big Brother Kyle for second, I believe. Logano was right behind Kurt Busch, and Logano, knowing how aggressive he is and knowing how he wants to finish as high as possible, tried to find a way to get around Kurt Busch. First, he got the 41 loose by giving him an aggressive bump, and then just kind of turned him, in my opinion. And then Kurt Busch went around. He did cross the start-finish line, barely. He tore up the whole front of his car and finished, I think, 21st, which brings an end of a streak of like 10 consecutive top 10s leading into this race. Kurt Busch said in his interview something like, "Logano simply just drove straight through us." Took his coochie to Tony Gibson. Tweeted his displeasure. "Stupid is as stupid does," using exclamation points in his tweet. So certainly, the list of people in the garage who dislike Logano just got even bigger, and it's already pretty big. And I don't want to dislike Logano, but it's just kind of like I like how aggressive he is and how hungry he is. But the thing is, like he does it in like a stupid fashion, and it certainly isn't helping him make friends in the garage, which I think is important. And certainly, Kurt Busch isn't likely going to be forgetting this anytime soon. On lap 90, heading into turn number 1, the famous wreck that happens at play tracks known as the Big One took place, and it took out a total of 22 cars. 40 cars entered this race, so that's over half the field, and it did a couple things. First of all, I think it basically guaranteed the rest of the race to be the Penske-Gibbs show, which I wasn't very flattered by. It would be nice to see other drivers and teams take turns up front, but this way pretty much guaranteed it. It also changes the chase picture significantly because drivers like Jamie McMurray, Casey King got involved in the wreck, and this puts them in a hole that they didn't want to be in, or for some drivers like Casey King, for example, it put them in a deeper hole. If they were in an even deeper hole than they were already in. Also, some interesting facts here. Kevin Harvick entered this race not finishing worse than 20th. He got involved in the wreck. You can actually see him. He was the one that lifted Brian Scott up in the air. He would finish 39th. So by far his worst finish of the season. And even though points don't matter in the regular season anymore, this definitely it took a large amount of his points lead away. But he's still the points leader. Also, when I look at this wreck, all 400 cars got involved in it. You can see 3 of them right here: Johnson, Jr., Chase Elliott, and then he's not shown here, but Casey King got involved. Highest finishing Hendrick driver finished 21st, Dale Earnhardt Jr. And so, really, the more I think about it, Hendrick Motorsports has actually underperformed this season than what we're usually expecting to see him, because they only have 2 wins this year, and both of them came early in the season from Jimmy Johnson, race number 2 at Atlanta, and race number 5 at Fontana. They certainly have had the speed to win, and especially in Johnson, Chase Elliott, and Jr. But compared to Penske, Gibbs, and even Stuart Haas, they just haven't performed as well. It feels like they're like the third or fourth best team right now, when usually we expect them to be like the first or second best team. This wreck also took out a number of drivers that were looking for that win to get themselves into the chase, like Danica Patrick, Paul Menard, Matt Benedetto, Brian Scott. So this wreck didn't help them at all. Now they're gonna have to hope for like a lucky few mileage win or a win on the road course for these kind of drivers. This was Tony Stewart's last race at Daytona, or at least in this breakup series. And throughout the majority of the race, he stuck around in the back because he wanted to avoid chaos, like the big one, and for good reasons. Entering this race, Tony Stewart had that important win, but he was not into the top 30 in points. He was almost there, 32nd points, 9 points behind Brian Scott at the time. So that's why Tony Stewart hanging around in the back, because he certainly did not want to get involved in the big one and put himself in the big hole. But it still didn't keep Tony Stewart from still getting trouble. Late in the race, he got himself towards the front, and I think a lot of us thought, including myself, that he cut down a tire in turns 1-2, which caused him to spun and go back up into the wall. Look at a couple of other drivers like Casey Mears, Carl Edwards, and Ryan Blaney. But it turns out Tony Stewart said that he got loose and overcorrected it, which was an interesting response, but I'm going to believe him. So even though his last start at Daytona didn't go well, he is now into the top 30 points because he finished ahead of drivers like Ryan Scott and Regan Smith, who got involved in the big one. So now, as long as Tony Stewart stays consistent enough to stay inside the top 30 points, which I'm sure he will, he will make the chase. And this knocks out Jamie McMurray. And what this does for drivers like McMurray, Ryan Blaney, Dale Earnhardt Jr., Ryan Newman, Austin Dillon, Casey Kane, Trevor Bayne, Allmendinger Larson, and a couple other drivers is that not only are they going to have to race better than what they've been doing throughout the majority of 2016 so far, I think they're also going to have to take risk, and because now I think this puts drivers like the ones that I just mentioned in more of a must-win situation. So it wouldn't surprise me if we see those drivers that I just mentioned race differently throughout the rest of the regular season. One topic that gets talked about pretty much every single time it comes to restricted plate tracks, Daytona and Talladega, is the possibility for an underdog to get a really good finish, or heck, even win the thing. We've seen that many times in the history of NASCAR. And while no underdog driver won, many still got really good finishes. Look at third place Trevor Bayne. That's his second top 5 this year, another top 10. This really helped. This does him great wonders when it comes to trying to make the chase on points. Ricky Stenhouse Jr. finishes 5th, so this is now his second top 5 this year. In his previous 3 full-time seasons, he never scored more than 1 top 5. Kyle Larson, Austin Dillon, really good finishes for them. Greg Biffle finally gets his first top 10 of the year. In his previous full-time Sprint Cup Series seasons, he never went this long without a top 5. Not top 5, top 10. Clint Boyer gets just his 3rd top 5 of the year. Michael McDowell gets... Did I just say top 5? Top 10. Michael McDowell gets his 3rd top 10 ever in his career. Interestingly, they've all come at Daytona. Cole Witt, I don't know if that's true or not, but that I think is the best finish for Jay Robinson, also Premium Motorsports, I believe. Casey Mears gets a solid 12th place finish. Allmendinger, Ryan Blaney, Eric Roll around out the top 15. So definitely a lot of underdogs or drivers in smaller teams got really good finishes, and we'll likely not see stuff like this again, probably not until Talladega. So reflecting on the 2016 Coke 0 for 100 at Daytona, I'm going to give it a solid race. It had its ups and downs. Hopefully the commercials are a lot less in the future, I hope. Maybe also a new aero package for plate tracks starting in 2017. Keselowski now wins for the 3rd time this season, and it's definitely looking like he is going to be once again someone to reckon with when the chase comes around. And now we head to Kentucky, and I think this Kentucky race is going to be wild. And here's why I say that: it has a new surface. It also has a slightly different configuration. Turns 1 and 2 are a little bit more banked than turns 3 and 4. So now it's sort of the Darlington, a 1.5 mile tracks. And races at repaves, I think they can be polarizing. They can be very wild races with a lot of attrition, or in other words, a wreckfest. Look at Las Vegas and Kansas after they just got repaved. Also, NASCAR's bringing the even lower downforce package, as I like to call it, the same one used in Michigan, to Kentucky. And with the cars being even harder to drive, I think we're going to be seeing more cars just out of control. And so that's why I think the Kentucky race is going to be wild. Also, because it really is sort of is a new Kentucky. I don't really think you can really look at like previous stats as a way of predicting the winners. So honestly, I think it's going to be a little bit hard to predict the winners, but in my opinion, I think it's likely going to be a Penske versus Gibbs show. And interestingly, and what's very interesting to point out here is that Kentucky last year was really the start of the Gibbs domination. From Kentucky to now, Joe Gibbs Racing and Toyota has really just dominated NASCAR. And what surprised me, Joe Gibbs dominates Kentucky again. But I'm going to go with a Penske driver. I know I called his racing style, I know I called Joe Logano's racing style a jackass, but I'm going to go with Logano. I think he's finally going to get that win at Kentucky, something that he's come close to doing in the Cup Series the last few years. Anyway, that is it for this race review. I hope you liked it. Be sure to rate, comment, subscribe, and bye.